Thank you for joining us for this webinar on glucose testing for diabetes remission on a Saturday morning. I hope you had a very good start to your morning. I'm Dheeraj, CEO of Navrelia Foods. We at Navrelia Foods are introducing healthy and science-backed foods into Indian market. As a first product, we introduced Ruby Roti Mix, one of India's lowest glycemic index rotis, into the market. As part of our education initiative, we are hosting a series of webinars with various guests. Today, we have an excellent speaker in Ms. Mehak Dhingra to share her knowledge on glucose testing and monitoring for diabetes remission. The webinar will last for 1 hour. We'll start with a presentation from Mehak, followed by an introduction of Ruby Roti Mix by me. We'll end the webinar with an audience Q&A. So please type in your questions and keep them coming in during the webinar. With that, let me introduce Ms. Mehak Dhingra. Mehak is a certified diabetes educator and a type 1 diabetes life coach. She's founder of Unstoppable Type 1 and hosts the podcast Shots and Pricks. While she's a lawyer by training, her personal battle with type 1 diabetes culminated in her working full-time with diabetics and helping them better manage the disease. She likens her story to that of an enduring spirit and not one of loud victories. With this guiding philosophy, she aims to help others find balance and joy in life, moving beyond the constraints of diabetes. Now I invite Mehak to share her knowledge about diabetes testing and remission with us. All yours, Mehak.
Thank you so much, Dheeraj. Good morning, everyone. If you can see me and hear me, please type good morning in chat box so that I know you can see me and hear me. Okay, guys, we are going to talk about diabetes. And for diabetes, lifestyle is important. So I will make sure you exercise your fingers today. So good morning. I'm waiting for a lot of you people to type in the chat box. If you can see me and hear me, type good morning while I share my screen. Okay. If my screen is visible, quickly type SS in chat box. SS means screen seen. Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. So I want to ask from all of you, how many of you don't check sugars because you're scared? If you check, results might be high. If it is you, type me in chat box. Quickly type me in chat box. Thank you, Shriram. Thank you so much for typing in. Now, how many of you feel that if I check my sugars and I get the readings, I might be able to make some changes in my lifestyle? Do you feel so? If you feel, say yes or no in chat box. Great, wonderful. Okay, you feel so. Yes, thank you so much for typing it. First of all, I want to thank each one of you for being here on a Saturday morning. I know it's a weekend time. We all want to laze around. We want to have fun, party, don't want to wake up early. But you are here. It means you want change in your life and you are willing to make an impact in your life. And that means a lot to me. So thank you so much for being here today with us. Now, I want to ask this one question from all of you. How many forms of diabetes do you know about? How many forms of diabetes do you know about? Quickly type in number. 1, 2, 3, 4, any numbers? 40, 63, okay. Some people are going way ahead. I like to know the name of the 40 forms when you say 3, 2, okay, great, wonderful. There are more than 75 forms of diabetes. Now, the next thing is, what are the common type of diabetes that we deal with in our everyday life? So some of the common forms are type 1 diabetes. If you are a type 1 and here attending the session, please type T1 in the chat box. Then the other form of diabetes is type 2 diabetes. If you are a type 2 here and attending the chat box, attending the web session, please type T2 in the chat box. Third is gestational diabetes, that is the pregnancy and diabetes. If you are a gestational diabetic, please type GD in chat box. And last but not the least, which is very famous and trending in India, is pre-diabetes. That means you're not diabetic yet, but you're at the verge of being diabetic. If you have been declared pre-diabetic by your doctor, please type PD in chat box. So let's see how many type 1s, type 2, gestational diabetes and PD we have in our chat box here. Great, wonderful. So I see people type 2, I see type 1, I see people who have written about type 1, type 1.5 and GD. Great, wonderful. I see type 2 also. That's wonderful. So let's understand type 2 diabetes. there are certain causes of type 2 diabetes, right? It is the most common type of diabetes. One of the most common cause you all might have heard is insulin resistance. I will not go in detail of insulin resistance because it's a complete topic in itself, but we'll quickly touch points on what all factors cause type 2 diabetes. Genetic factor. Genetic factor is my absolute favorite. Lot of people will come and say, I have diabetes because my parents also have diabetes. How many of you have said this, heard this, or you believe this is true? Type me in chat box. If you have said this, heard this, or believe it is true, type me in chat box. Great, thank you so much. Can I share a truth bomb with all of you? Can I share a truth bomb with all of you? If you all want to hear the truth, type TB in chat box. TB is truth bomb. Type TB in chat box. Great, thank you, Rekha. So, genetic factor means you have the genes, but you have to provide the trigger to the genes. And what is the trigger that we are providing to our genes? What is one trigger that we are providing to the genes? Lifestyle, chronic stress, unhealthy lifestyle, hormonal imbalance, obesity, all these causes of type 2 diabetes. And what we blame is genes. I have diabetes. Oh, my father also had. Your father didn't do anything wrong to you. You just inherited his genes. He got diabetes maybe 60 years in age. You are getting it at the 40 years of age. So how do we blame your father who got it maybe 20, 30, 40 years after you were born? And we are blaming him. Your father had diabetes because of whatever environmental factors he exposed himself to, and you have diabetes because of the lifestyle and unhealthy environmental factors that you exposed yourself to. So please understand, lifestyle is a utmost important thing that causes insulin resistance. Lifestyle is the thing that causes obesity. Lifestyle is the thing that causes hormonal balance. And lifestyle, we forget and we blame genetic factor. So we need to know that the cause is insulin resistance, which is caused by unhealthy lifestyle. Rest all are just ways to hide or justify our bad results. Now, India has an estimated dash people of living with diabetes as of 2019. So after that, they have not done the report. Anybody who can guess how many people in India are at present living with diabetes? It can be type 1, it can be type 2. Any guesses? Put the number. And the number will rise to 134 million by 2045. 8 crores. Okay. Some more guesses, please. India has an estimated 77 million as of 2019, and every year the rise is more of at least 10 million. So every year 10 million increase is seen. So we are more than 77 million as of 2019. Now out of 77 million, how many do you think do regular home monitoring? 1%, 2%, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. I want to know from each one of you. How many do you think do regular home monitoring? Quickly type in chat box. 1%? 7 million people तो करते ही होंगे. 10%? No guesses? Okay, so I'll tell you. 10 to 20% only monitor their blood sugars regularly, which is a very, very unfortunate state for us. So now moving forward, how many of you believe it's important to monitor blood sugars? If you believe it's important, type IMP in chat box. Type IMP in chat box. Great. 2 people have written, rest are still thinking. Okay. If you say, yes, it is important, I want you to write why you feel it's important. And if you have not written, I want you to know why you feel it is not important. Quickly in one word. If you have written, if you think that it is not important, most likely could be it irritates you. It's a tedious task. And if you have written it is important, I'm believing that you do it. It is important to regular monitor. Okay, great, wonderful. Now, why it is important to monitor? First, when you're monitoring, you know how your sugars are going and you can work towards better control. If you're monitoring, you can tailor out a treatment plan. That means when I know what I'm eating and how it is impacting my body, I know what to keep in my list and what to chuck out. So it helps you tailor your treatment plan. We are popping the pill given by the doctor, but do we know if that pill is helping us or not? Knowing levels is very important, Sriram, definitely. But the pill that I am popping every morning, is it even giving me results or not? Then it reduces the risk of complications. How many of you know that diabetes is a very disloyal disease? It has a lot of girlfriends and boyfriends. So someday it will be diabetes only, someday it will be diabetes and thyroid, diabetes and celiac, diabetes and kidney disease, diabetes and retinopathy. We want diabetes to be loyal to us. If you have come to our life, stay loyal. Don't bring your girlfriends and boyfriends along. We don't want them. So we need to reduce the risk of complication, which is only possible if you monitor regularly, religiously. Next, it improves your overall quality of life. How does it improve my overall quality of life? Any guesses? If I know my sugars are in range, I am happy that day and relaxed. The day I see, oh God, 300 again, my stress level shoots up. And as anyway, stress level is going to help or not? So it's already 300 and my stress level is going up. What will happen? Will my sugars come down? Will my sugars come down? No. Last but not the least, if you monitor regularly, you can take me from writing, you can achieve diabetes remission, but only in case of type 2 diabetes. If you are a case of type 2 diabetes who has not converted to insulin dosing, the chances of converting, having a remission is way high. If you are on insulin dosing, then also we need to, after understanding how your C-peptide works, like as in how much insulin your body is producing, there are chances of remission. And how many of you want remission? If you want remission, type REMI. REMI is short of remission. If you want remission, type REMI in chat box. Great, wonderful. Thank you, Sriram. Others, quickly, if you want remission. Pushpanjali, wonderful, great. Type 2, I know, type 1, I know there is no remission as of now, but nevertheless, we'll not lose hope. Someday, maybe some people like Dheeraj will come with some good formulas to help us cure that also. Okay. Now, what are the methods of monitoring? What are the common methods of monitoring that we go through? First is random sugar. I want to tell you, how many of you check your random sugars? If you check your random sugars, please type RS in chat box. Kisi din, like, it's like we go to the park and there is this, today they have the camp, blood sugar camp, and we're like, okay, do my blood sugars also. And you're like, okay, it is normal. How many of you do that? Park camps, Sunday park camps are like the best place to get your sugar tested. Thank you, Sriram. I want to tell you it is the least useful form of knowing about your diabetes. And if you're getting yourself random sugar check, please do not waste a strip. It is a waste of a strip. Honestly, it is not going to tell us anything about what's happening in the body. Next, how many of you check your fasting sugars to know whether you have diabetes or not? Fasting sugars help us determine factors whether we have pre-diabetes or diabetes. So fasting sugar is very important. When somebody is at the verge of pre-diabetes, the doctor says, please check your fasting sugars for next 15 to 20 days for help us determining where you are heading towards. So fasting sugar is one important factor. Why fasting sugar is important? Because for entire night we have not eaten, we have fasted. And if after not eating anything also my sugars are coming up, that means there is something wrong in the natural functioning of my body. That is why fasting sugar is a very important determining factor. Next comes your HbA1c. How many of you know what is HbA1c? HbA1c is the average of glucose control over past 3 months. So 3 months, it cannot be same, right? Some days it will be high, some days it will be low. And after taking the high and low into target, we take out the average, and that average tells your average blood glucose. HbA1c is a good factor to determine how you are progressing. However, there are a lot of controversies in HbA1c coming lately. I'll talk some other day. Now let's understand about at-home monitoring. So glucometers have made place in the market. Now glucometers are pretty old. We all have that glucometer somewhere in home, right? Which we may pick up one odd day in a week to check our blood sugars. How many of you check more than once in a week on glucometer? If you check more than once in a week, type the number of time you check at home. Quickly type the number of time you check your blood sugars at home. Weekly. Thank you, Pushpanjali, for sharing it very honestly. Once a month. Okay. So yeah, we have purchased the machine, and sometimes purchasing the thing only works. I have machine, I know my blood sugar. That is what is happening. Second is continuous glucose monitor. It is a very new thing in India. About this, we'll talk later some other time. It's a very detailed topic and very useful uh, device. Tanveer is writing once after 14 days. Okay. Now let's come to glucometers. Let's understand about glucometers only. Now, glucometer, how does it work? It's a very small device. You all might have seen it's a small device that comes with all these other things. So it's a glucose monitor. We have testing strips, we have lancet, and we have a lancing device. The cost of glucometer is somewhere around 1800 to 2500 depending on the brand you purchase of. And testing strips are between 8 to 20 rupees. But these days now, Jan Aushadhi also is bringing some glucometers, which cost us way less. Next comes, how does glucose monitor work? So you prick yourself, a tiny prick is required, and blood is put on this testing strip. Once you put the blood on the testing strip, there is a small chemical reaction that happens, and the monitor shows your numbers, right? I think it hardly takes 1 or 2 seconds to show your number. And these numbers, what do they help you determine? What do these numbers help you determine? They help you determine whether you are on the right track or not. Now the point is, okay, Mehak, I have glucometer, I am checking. But how often do you want me to test, and why do you want me to test, right? How many of you have this question? How often should I test? If you have this question, type me in chat box. Thank you. So if you are a type 1 diabetic, you need to test at least 4 to 7 times a day. That is before meals and before snacks as well. After meals, 2 hours, before and after exercise, at bedtime, and occasionally during the night, that is your 3 a.m. sugars, I would say twice a week. So if you are a type 1 diabetic, you need to check this much. And if you have type 2 diabetes, testing is advised 1 to 3 times a day, not week, month, 14 days. 1 to 3 times a day. You should check before and after meal and occasionally at bedtime. So when do I check? Monday fasting, Tuesday after breakfast, Wednesday before lunch, Thursday after lunch, Friday. So you have to set 3 times. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Put your timetable, create a very nice timetable for yourself that, okay, Monday I'll check fasting, breakfast, after breakfast. Tuesday I'll check for 3 days, follow the same pattern. So Monday, fasting before breakfast, after breakfast. Tuesday, fasting before breakfast, after breakfast. Wednesday, fasting before breakfast, after breakfast. You will know your pattern. Next 3 days, change the pattern. Before lunch, after lunch, before dinner. Before lunch, after lunch, before dinner. Before lunch, after lunch, before dinner. You will get a beautiful pattern. And once you have this pattern, now let's come to why do I need to test so often? Because you will get a beautiful pattern. And once you have this pattern, you can go and talk to your doctor. You can ask your doctor what's going wrong. Why you were fasting, you are checking. Now you have your pre-lunch sugar. Suppose your pre-lunch is going high and post breakfast is okay. Then you can ask doctor, no, what's going wrong here? What's going wrong in the evening? Why my 3 a.m. sugars are rising? All this data will help you talk to your doctor. So what you have to do is you have to create a blood sugar log. How do you create a blood sugar log? This is an example of blood sugar log. You have to write the date, you have to write your sugars, you have to write your insulin, and you also have to write what meal you have eaten, what like breakfast you have eaten, what lunch you have eaten, and what dinner you have eaten. So your log will have your meal, you will have your sugar values. If you are taking insulin, you'll have your insulin. Also, post meal also will be there, which will be tracked. Now, once you have your log ready, you can go and talk to your doctor, right? So you will have a pattern in hand to talk to your doctor. You will have better, you will yourself make better medical decisions. Suppose somebody's sugar is rising at 6 o'clock in the evening. What does that mean? That means maybe their medicine that they're popping once in morning will maybe they need it in evening as well, and before 6 o'clock. So once you have these data to talk to your doctor, you can decide, I need to change my medicine, I need to change my food here, I need to change what kind of lunch I'm eating that my 6 p.m. is spiking. And all these medical decisions will help you solve your problems and reach remission. Also, once you see better numbers, it motivates you to do better and get better results. So what is one thing we all want out of our type 2 diabetes? Remission. We all want to get rid of those popping pills, right? Which is only possible if you track and you make changes and you work towards problem solving and remission. So now what are normal blood sugar ranges? Let's see here quickly. Pre-meal sugar should be somewhere between 70 to 100. That means your pre-meal before breakfast, before lunch, and before dinner should be between 70 to 100. If your pre-meal is not 70 to 100, that means your sugars are not in control. Post-meal sugars. Your post-meal should be between 100 to 140. That is 2 hours after the meal. It should be between 100 to 140. Now there is something known as target range, that is 70 to 180. You have to try to maintain your sugars between 70 to 180. Now, if I'm saying pre-meal should be 70 to 100, post-meal should be 100 to 140, why am I talking about target range? So I am talking about target range because at times when we have diabetes, there are things which are not in our control. Like if there are hormonal changes happening in your body, if you're a female, females go through a lot of other hormonal changes. In that case, your pre-meal may be more than 100, but we have to work on bringing our post-meal within 70 to 180. How do we do that? We need to understand what is blood sugar spike. So first, I think it is ahead I have covered. But before I go to what is blood sugar spike, how glucose impacts my food choices, I'll quickly touch on this, that how glucometer impacts my food choices. Personally, I check my sugar at least 6 to 10 times a day. So why do I do it? I'll tell you quickly. Once there, you might have heard a lot of these diabetes remission, sugar fit, and all these kind of brands coming up who claim that they will cure your diabetes. So I was attending one of these programs where this lady said, you have to drink smoothie every morning. I was very fascinated. Okay, smoothie every morning, that's amazing. And she gave us wonderful recipes of these tasty smoothies. One morning I had smoothie and I checked my 2-hour sugars. It was high. So she said, right now it is not suiting your body. Next morning I again take smoothie and I saw my sugars are high. And then I wrote her, I said, are you sure I should drink smoothie every morning? She said, stop checking your blood sugar and drink smoothie every morning. That was being blind to the result I'm getting, letting the things harm me more and making the wrong food choices. Now, every morning, how many of you eat bread? Bread is like bread and cornflakes, staple breakfast in almost every Indian household. I want you to eat it next 5 mornings and check your blood sugar. Every day you will see a spike. That means that's a wrong food choice. Okay, Meg, I'll not eat bread, I'll eat paratha. We are further going bad. So, okay, besan chila. Okay, now besan chila, you put a lot of fiber into it, it will not give you that spike. So that's a better food choice. Now, eating bread. you are eating bread omelette or you are eating only omelette. When you eat only omelette, you will see, okay, there's no spike. But when you're eating bread and omelette, you will see a spike. So you'll understand bread needs to be chucked out. Oh, one of my favorite thing, tea and rusk. Oh God. So I was in clinic one day sitting, and this one man walks in. He is a police officer by profession. And I asked him, okay, what do you have breakfast? No, ma'am, I don't eat breakfast. I said, what do you mean you don't eat breakfast? He said, morning I have tea and 4 rusk. After that, I don't eat anything. I go for my work. 4 rusk are equivalent to 1.5 roti. And he's saying, oh, I don't have any breakfast. So these 4 rusks are going to give him blood sugar spike. So this person came and told me his diet is very less. And once I analyzed further, I realized that he has all wrong food choices. So coming further to what is blood sugar spike and how much spike is normal post-meal. So a blood sugar spike occurs when glucose level in the blood rises sharply after eating. Few things to emphasize on. Glucose level rise sharply. Small rise nahi hai. It's a sharp rise after eating. Okay. Now, the point is, what is normal spike? Now, normal spike is that if you have eaten anything, your spike should be in the level of 30 to 50 mgdl. That means if your pre-meal sugars are somewhere between 120, so the spike, normal spike is up to 150 to 170. So if pre-meal sugars are 100, your normal spike is up to 130 to 150. If your pre-meal sugars are somewhere between 80, so your normal spike is somewhere till 120. So we have to consider pre-meal sugar plus the spike. And I would have food that don't give me major spikes. So somebody wrote paratha. We'll discuss about paratha. Now, what helps you decide how much food will spike post-consumption? And what factor helps us decide that how much food will spike post-consumption? So any guesses anybody wants to share? What factor helps us decide? Any guesses? Glycemic index of the food. So every food has a glycemic index. Glycemic index is what? It defines that how much this food, the carbohydrate of the food, every food has carbohydrate which converts into glucose. Okay. So glycemic index tells us percentage of carbohydrate that turns into glucose in the first 2 hours after the food is eaten. So glycemic index is telling us what? That okay, if for example, mango has a glycemic index of 51, so that means 50% of carbs in mango. 51% of carbs in mango will convert in glucose in first 2 hours. Okay. Now, what are the levels of glycemic index? There are 3 levels of glycemic index. That first level is low glycemic. That means anything that has a glycemic less than 45, that means it is going to convert that much only in glucose. For example, apple has a little higher glycemic index. Let me take glycemic index example of paneer. Cottage cheese. Cottage cheese has glycemic index of 15. That means only 15% will convert into glucose in first 2 hours of it being eaten. Okay. Next is medium glycemic index, that is 45 to 71. So like we right now talked about mango. Mango has 51%, 51 glycemic index. That means 51% of carbs in mango will convert into glucose in next 1 to 2 hours. Now comes high glycemic index, that is something above 70. And my favorite example is yellow pumpkin, a very famous vegetable in India, yellow pumpkin. Glycemic index is 77. I just ate pumpkin and roti. Why my sugars are high? Because pumpkin has glycemic index of 77. So 77% converts into glucose in first 2 hours. Now, these are some of the common food, glycemic index of the common food. Wheat flour. How many of you eat wheat flour? If you eat wheat flour, type WF in chat box. Type WF in chat box. Everybody eats wheat flour. And wheat flour, I am just having roti, nothing else. Paratha, somebody said. So wheat flour has glycemic index of 62. That means 62% gets converted into glucose in first 2 hours. Jowar flour, 77. Ragi flour, 54 to 104. I'll tell you something. How many of you have heard that if you have diabetes, eat ragi? How many of you have heard that? If you have diabetes, eat ragi. If you have heard, type me in chat box. Great, thank you so much. Ragi is going to spike more than regular wheat. Ragi has super high glycemic index. Bajra, almond's glycemic index is only 1. Idli, our favorite, 77. And if we see rice, 74. Okay, how many of you have heard quickly? You can eat roti, but you cannot eat rice in diabetes. How many of you have heard you can eat roti, but not rice in diabetes? Oats are good. Oats you can eat. Don't eat roti, eat oats. Now, if you see, what is the difference between the glycemic index of oats and rice? How are we justifying oats as good and rice as bad? Or how much is the difference between the glycemic index of wheat flour and rice, and what gives us the right to justify that rice is bad and wheat flour is good? I always say the rice is like a poor man. When we don't have anybody to blame, we'll go to the rice and put the blame on rice. Last but not the least, I'll talk about Ruby Roti. I have personally tried it with wonderful experience, which has a glycemic index of less than 5. It's absolutely difficult to have something with such low glycemic index. So I'll quickly share, just when I'm feeding ragi and yellow pumpkin to my 6-month-old, as suggested by doctor. Please, you can feed ragi and yellow pumpkin to your 6-month-old, but we need to understand that there are other options also. I don't know why 6-month-old they have recommended also. 6-month-old has to be on the breastfeed. 7 months, if you mean above 6-month-old, then also certain food need to be introduced. So I would suggest don't go for high glycemic food instantly. I want to share about my experience with Ragi Roti. I was Shri called me, Dheeraj's wife, Shri called me, and she said that, Mehak, I want you to try this flour, Ragi Roti. So I said, Shri, my diabetes is type 1 diabetes and I'm an insulin dependent. I remember entire conversation. She said, it's okay, Mehak, I want you to try it. I said, Shri, my diabetes is not same. I think it will still spike me. She said, Mehak, trust me and try. So I said, okay, insulin, my insulin is not fixed. I cannot take same dose. Every day it will be different. She said, you put all your laws of diabetes management the way you do regularly with your wheat and try Ragi Roti. This Ruby Roti. And I went ahead, I tried Ruby Roti. My sugars didn't spike that day. They remained stable for 2 hours. And after that, they went towards further lower side, but they didn't go up. I thought first day is a fluke. Next day again I tried. Next day again it happened, and I realized that I don't need same amount of insulin that I need for eating roti when I'm eating Ruby Roti. That means wheat roti I need more insulin, and when I'm eating Ruby Roti I need less insulin, as well as the spike is more stable. So it was wonderful experience trying something which is so low glycemic. And so Tanveer said paratha. Tanveer, you need to talk to Dheeraj and Shri for getting this solution that we can eat parathas thanks to Ruby Roti mix, that we can eat parathas by stuffing this flour. It will give you very stable result. Even if you fill potatoes in it. So at least the flour is low glycemic. It will balance it out. I would really recommend. And now go over to Dheeraj. Dheeraj?
Like, thank you for the excellent talk. We will come back to you. And as we see a lot of people attending the webinar, please do start typing in your questions to Mehak. So I'm going to take a few minutes, actually 3 minutes introducing the Ruby Roti, and then there's a short video that I'd like to share, especially on lines of pre-meal and post-meal testing that Mehak has alluded to in her talk. So while I do that, please start typing in the questions that you'd like Mehak to answer. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen. Right. So, as I mentioned earlier, right? So, this is the macronutrient profile of Ruby Roti. So the Ruby Roti is something that a team of doctors and scientists have actually come together and worked on for about close to 2 years before coming up with this product. Each Ruby Roti would have about 9 grams of protein and 11 grams of fiber in it. And you could see the ingredients of the Ruby Roti itself. And then on the right side here, you actually see the nutrition information of a monthly box, which would have 30 sachets. So that would be 30 meals. Each sachet would have flour equal to making 2 rotis. And the idea is we wanted to have a portion control as well as come up with a product with very high satiety index. So that means that you wouldn't have to eat frequently, or you would actually stay full for longer once you actually have consumed the roti itself, right? And one of the main goals for us was to actually come up with a staple, as Mehak has actually pointed out earlier, right? When you look at the staple choices that we have as Indians in our food matrix, low glycemic index food choices are really low in terms of staple foods. So that's one of our main driving force to actually come up with this product itself. And so we did claim that our glycemic index was less than 5. So how did we come to the conclusion? Well, it's not something that we are claiming by ourselves. So we did have a clinical trial done at a nutrition lab in Oxford, UK on actual people. And this is the result of the report where they have actually concluded that our glycemic index is 4.4. So it's not something that we are actually claiming ourselves. More importantly, you'd have to remember that this is just a number. As Mehak has rightly pointed out in her talk earlier, you actually want to test it out for yourself and see if it's actually helping you or not. I think one of the things that we really want people to take away from our education efforts is to take control of the food choices that you actually make. So, for example, quite a few of you have typed in saying that we thought ragi was supposed to be really helpful. And I think there was another lady who said that, I'm feeding this to my 6-month-old child. So in that particular case, I'm not sure if that child or baby is a diabetic. What Mehak was talking about is primarily for diabetics, right? It's not that, millets are bad or anything like that. They are very good for the environment and they're also probably good for us. But when you're talking about blood sugar control and diabetics, that's where we are actually getting the glycemic index and these pictures into, or these numbers into the picture, and you have to be very careful in choosing your or making those food choices, right? So so what we are actually asking you to do is to really think about these food choices and, more importantly, test it on yourself and see if it actually makes sense. So for example, we are putting up these numbers over here of glycemic index and glycemic load. I know we haven't actually gotten to details of glycemic index and glycemic load, but I'm pretty sure we'd be covering those topics in future webinars. All right, so probably we'd have another session with Mike as well, picking up a few topics and go in more detail. But the idea again is to essentially, nudge you to actually try something and check your blood sugar levels and see how your body is responding, right? So that these numbers or tables or values are a good guideline, but end of the day, the proof would have to come from you seeing how your body actually responds to that particular food, and then based on that, you actually make those choices. So what we have done is we have made a small video demonstrating the testing itself. So I'm going to start sharing that video now. It's, I think, 4-minute video. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about the Ruby Roti and then get a lot more educator content and information about future webinars, please do take out your smartphone and scan this QR code, and you'll be able to join the Navrelia Foods community. Okay. Having said that, here's a video. This is a more general point. You really want to, actually test the product and look at the results, not just for our products, but for any product that actually claims to be diabetic friendly or reduce your blood sugar levels. This is the kind of method that you really want to follow. And it is pretty simple. I'm going to demonstrate that now in a couple of moments. So as you can see, first you would actually prepare your Ruby Roti meal, right? So that's step one. So here's my sumptuous Ruby Roti meal here. Step two is actually checking my premeal blood sugar. So this is what I'm going to do now. So here's a glucometer. You could get it from anywhere, Apollo Pharmacy or whatever. Anything is fine. One thing you want to keep in mind is if you're actually going to use a particular instrument, then you want to keep that instrument constant throughout your testing process, because there could be differences in measurements if you actually change the instrument. Okay, so I'm going to take a strip now, get my glucometer ready. There you go. So my glucometer is actually ready for testing. So my pre-meal reading is 90. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to note down this reading in the diary. And if you actually look at the diary itself, you'll actually see that there are 6 rows here. The first one is your baseline. So here's my testing diary. This is for my baseline. I had a couple of wheat rotis yesterday, just like 2 Ruby rotis here. And then I checked my pre-meal, which was 87, post-meal, which was 140. And the difference between them is the blood sugar spike, which I've actually tested after 90 minutes, which is 53. As I've actually tested earlier, my pre-meal now with the Ruby Roti, spinach upgrowing flavor is 90. So I'm just going to write that down now. So here's spinach and nudge wine. I'm going to put this one here. And now I'm going to finish up my meal, and I will see you after 90 minutes when I do the post-meal blood glucose measurement. Hello, we're back again. I've already had my Ruby Roti meal, and it's 90 minutes after I had my Ruby Roti meal. So now I'm going to do the post-meal blood glucose measurements. So again, we do the same thing. I'm putting the blood strip in. Okay, there we go. The glucometer is ready. Now I'm just going to take another finger. Okay. Okay, let's see, 2, 1, 97. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this one down here after spinach is wine, 97. So my pre-meal was 90 and post-meal is 97. So the difference is 7. So I'm going to write this down in the last column. So this is how you actually check your pre-meal and post-meal blood glucose measurements. So now that I've actually tried the spinach and nut wine, for the next 4 days, I'm going to try the other 4 flavors and do the same thing, fill up the other columns. And the general idea is that it doesn't matter what you're comparing it with, but the idea is to actually get you to do these tests on yourself, to compare different foods which you think are really helpful to control your blood sugar levels, post-meal blood sugar levels, and actually maintain a diary like this. And once you actually determine which one's actually working for you well, and like the taste, texture, and other things that go along well with the curries or sides that you have, you probably want to stick to that. Thank you. Okay, we hope the video itself is very useful to actually give a sense of what we are actually going for. So now that's done, let's start taking questions. So we have quite a few questions coming up. Yeah. So Mehak, one of the questions that we have is glycemic index versus glycemic load. What's the difference?
Okay, so glycemic load is a very big topic in itself, but if I have to tell you quickly, glycemic load is glycemic index into carbohydrate of the content you are eating. It's a method to calculate that if I'm eating anything with high glycemic index, and I'm eating this much amount, how much will it spike my blood sugar? So, to give you an example of mango, something you are eating, mango, maybe you are eating mango which is high GI, but you are eating in a less amount. So the carbs that are going in your body are less. The chances are it is going to spike your sugars less. Dheeraj, you have shared your screen. I think it is by mistake. So glycemic index is a glycemic load is a very detailed topic. I won't be able to cover it in detail, but I hope I was able to answer your question. Just Dheeraj, I'll answer Varsha also. Varsha, if your child is a diabetic, ragi and yellow pumpkin is something I would not suggest. But if your child is not a diabetic, you can give ragi and yellow pumpkin. But I would also want to introduce more fruits which are low GI, or more pureed like berries, apple, other things also. So I don't know what all your doctor has suggested. Maybe mashed brown rice. Something on the lower glycemic index is also good for a child. But yours, if a non-diabetic growing child, you can give ragi and yellow pumpkin like Dheeraj suggests. We are talking about diabetics here. Yeah, Dheeraj. Now you are on mute.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Okay, so next question is, what are the ingredients of Ruby Roti and will it taste the same as wheat flour? Okay, this is probably okay. So, Mehak, I can answer this, but more importantly, because you have actually tried it, it'd be nice to actually hear from you and what you thought.
So I want to tell you, even ragi roti doesn't taste same like a wheat roti. But so even Ruby Roti is not going to same taste like a wheat roti, but the way it gives me result and it doesn't taste bad. Also, I want to mention here, they have added so much of flavors into it. So there is like spinach Ruby Roti. They have a classic Ruby Roti. Then they have, I think, tomato flavored, different flavors of Ruby Roti. So when you eat that flavored roti, that is way better than wheat roti. Somehow I have a bias against, I don't like the taste of wheat. So I personally loved Ruby Roti's taste.
Right. Okay. And I think someone has asked in the chat box, can we have any sides with Ubility? Yes, absolutely. You can actually have any side with Ubility. There is no restriction. The underlying principle there is to just substitute your staple, and you could have whatever that you normally want to have, or what your nutritionist or dietitian or doctor actually recommends. Okay. Next, I have another question, Mehak. Uh, something on the lines of uh, uh, what you were actually mentioned in your talk earlier. So you did mention that one of the things that a type 2 diabetic, one of the testing things that a type 2 diabetic has to do is pre-bedtime test, right? Can you explain what's the rationale behind it and what is it that I would actually get doing that?
So see, I'll tell you, it's a very, very important test. Pre-bedtime test is different from your post-dinner test. Okay. This is very important. Generally, it is recommended to have your dinner 4 hours before you sleep. Okay. Now, pre-dinner sugars. Sometimes when we are eating high protein food or something which is high fat, we might have normal sugars here, that is 4 hours post my meal, pre-sleeping time, my sugars may be normal, but when I wake up, it is high. And if it is happening repetitively, that before going to bed, it is low, and when I'm waking up, it is coming high, then I need to know what's happening wrong. So that means there can be multiple factors. Either I am having a hormonal change at 3 a.m. in the morning. That's why we also check 3 a.m. sugars then. Or it is the fat that is causing a delayed spike in the night. So I need to see and monitor, like we talked about making better food choices. If we are monitoring these things, my pre-bed sugar, 3 a.m. sugar, and morning sugar, I will be able to make better food choice, whether it is the food that is impacting or the hormones.
Right, got it. And another question that we have is, uh, should diabetics eat every 2 hours? How often should they eat?
That's a complete myth. So
Right.
let's understand why I said it's a complete myth. In type 2 diabetes, we have insulin resistance. That means our pancreas are overworking to produce more insulin so that our body works normally. Now, when there is no food in the body, the pancreas get to rest and they have to work only on the base insulin. That means the basic insulin required for the hormones. Now, every 2 hours you are putting food in the body. These pancreas, which already have to overproduce to take care of your food, now they're working every 2 hours. Pump 2 hours, pump 2 hours, pump 2 hours. Now, what is happening? This is getting weak by overdoing the work, because our insulin receptors are not taking insulin. These are overproducing the insulin. So now I am putting over pressure on the pancreas to produce more insulin so that I eat every 2 hours. And eventually what happens? A type 2 has to be shifted to insulin, because now these pancreas have slowly started dying. That's why most of us say type 2, the chances of remission are high if you have not started insulin. The chances of remission lowers down if you have started insulin, because the chances are that you have already overburdened your pancreas so much that they're not producing the efficient amount of insulin required for survival. So eating low glycemic food also helps here, because your pancreas will not have to pump harder to meet the spike of the high glycemic food. So that way, I say that you don't have to eat every 2 hours. Eat only when you feel hungry. And if your doctor says that if you'll not eat every 2 hours, you'll go into hypo, please ask your doctor to reduce the medicine dosage. You don't need to go into hypo by not eating. If you're going into hypo, that means your medicine dosage is way too strong than required.
Thanks for clarifying that. That was really good. There's another question. Okay, looks like there's another one that we got from chat. Okay, let's just complete this one before we go to the next one. What are the symptoms of what is the symptoms of high levels of sugar levels physically?
That's a very good question. So three common systems: excess hunger, excess thirst, excess urination. If you see in anybody, if you see somebody is excessively going for urination, excessively drinking water, or excessively feeling hungry, even if it's a 1 month old child, please go and get their blood sugar tested. It's very important. So these three factors you have to take care of. Obviously, there are other factors that come in: fatigue, muscle loss, weight loss, or even weight gain in case of type 2 diabetes. But these three are the major factors that help us define whether, like, it helps us judge quickly whether a person has diabetes or not.
Right. And also, the next question is probably more related to the dosage adjustment. So, I think it also ties in with what you're actually doing in the talk itself. Checking pre-meal and post-meal blood sugar levels, and then adjusting the dosage of medication. So, or insulin for that matter, right? So, what is your recommendation on that? So, I'm just summing up a few points that people raise. So,
So I'll share one small example. When I learned about food and management, I, like Dheeraj told you, I'm an advocate by profession. When I started learning about food and management, I would log my data, and every 14 days I would go and sit with my doctor and say, adjust my dosages. And every 14 days, my doctor got fed up of me. She was like, why you are coming every 14 days? I said, no, I know I can control it. Why should I let it go now? So similarly, what you need to do is log your data. Every 14 days, sit with your doctor and say, reduce my dosage. And I can give you in return. You don't need any fancy stuffs. You don't need these fancy applications or pay for 50,000 or 1 lakh subscription of an year. All you need to do is make better food choices, monitor, log, go to your doctor and ask to reduce dosages. Eventually, you will see, by making the right food choices, logging properly, and maintaining your checking frequently at home, you will yourself be able to reduce your dosages. However, we don't know, like, after, if you are taking metformin, let's say 500 mg. So now we don't know, there is no 450 mg. So that's why we need to go to doctor and ask, okay, when is the time when from 500 I can go to the lower dosage? That is required. That is why the role of doctor is required here.
right. Okay. Sorry, Mike, I'm just going to intervene here. And there's something when you're actually responding to the question. One of the things that I remember from a previous webinar is also a couple of factors. One was exercise, the role of exercise in diabetes remission. And if you could actually touch upon that, that'd be really helpful. And the second thing is, because you're a diabetes lifestyle coach, what do you in case studies or in patients who are actually successful in remission, what are the common themes that you had seen, and where do people generally fail, diabetics generally fail to actually make those changes, right? So I asked 3 questions, so take your time.
Okay. So first of all, let's talk about a role of exercise. Role of exercise is very important. See, we all were made for movement only. The human being was born for movement. Desk jobs have come now because technology has come now. So if you are moving, if your all joints are moving, you will be more fit, whether it is for diabetes or not for diabetes. Also, how does exercise help? When we eat food, there is certain glucose which is free flowing in the blood and certain that is consumed by our cells for the energy. When you exercise, the free flowing glucose in the blood gets burned in form of calorie burning. So it helps you reduce your sugars. So exercise is utmost important. Now, coming to the lifestyle management and how people who have seen successful results, what do they do? I call it faith model of diabetes management, FAITH. So what does faith stand for? F stands for understanding your food and water. These one thing that you need to work on is your food and water. A is your activity and sleep. I is your insulin spikes. That is like not eating high glycemic to prevent the insulin spike. T is for technology. So you need to know what technology like glucose meter or continuous glucose monitor that can help you maintain and track your logs. And H is your happiness, that is your mental health. If you have these 5 elements in control, nobody can stop you from going into diabetes remission. And these are the 5 elements that I work on, whether type 1 or type 2 diabetes. Only thing is that in type 1 diabetes, I changes to insulin dosing and T changes to time in range. For type 2 also, time in range is equally important, but first technology is important. For them to get used to technology is more important. So faith model of diabetes management, all you have to remember is faith: food and water, activity and sleep, insulin spikes, technology, and H is happiness, that is your mental health.
Right. Thank thank you, Bank. So I presume people who are actually following the system religiously or keeping to it have probably made significant progress in their journey to diabetes remission. And uh, I suppose when you actually falter on any of these pillars that you talked about, then the results are not really that optimal. So that pretty much brings us to the end of the webinar. So, Meg, before we close off, thanks a lot for joining us today and sharing your knowledge with us. We hope to see you a lot more frequently, covering different topics. But if somebody wanted to reach out to you or learn more about your work, where do you think they can actually learn more about you and contact you?
Can Google Mehak type 1 diabetes lifestyle coach, or you can simply go to mehakdhingra.com. So mehakdhingra.com is my website, or you can Google Mehak type 1 diabetes lifestyle coach.
All right, brilliant. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your time, Mehak, and hopefully the attendees found the webinar really useful. So if you have any questions for us or Mehak, please feel free to reach out to us on email. Thanks a lot, and have a nice rest of your evening. Bye.